Arnold Van Huis, thank you that I can come here to Wageningen University. You are the mastermind behind the edible insect report of the FAO 2013. First, some biographical things. You have been born 46 after the...
46, that's right. Yeah.
Short after the Second World War. You're a man of the hippie generation, let's say. 66, you have been 20 years old.
That's correct.
How it came that you were interested in entomology at that time as a young man?
Well,
Summer of love, 66.
I started to study tropical agriculture, and that was for 2 years. But then I had some teachers, some professors, who were telling about entomology, and I became so fascinated with insects that I changed from tropical agriculture to entomology.
And as a boy, you didn't play around with
No, not
insects?
really, no.
Okay.
But I had an uncle who was working on farms, so I became interested in agriculture.
So you're mostly insect as a pest then, huh?
Yeah, and that's how I started my career, also in pest management.
And how it went on the career? What was the critical point where it switched from insect as pest to insect as beneficial organism?
It was mainly in Niger. I was working in Niger, and I was teaching students how to control grasshoppers in millet. And I came back, that was from 82 to 85, and I came back about in 95, I think 1995, and that was a sabbatical on cultural aspects of insects in Africa. So I first went to Niger, interviewing people. So I went to the Plant Protection Service, and I was asking them about edible insects, among others. And they told me that the women were making more money by selling the grasshoppers from their millet than by selling their millet. So that was a complete eye-opener for me. So I asked during the rest of my travels in Africa a lot about edible insects. So I became more and more interested. So it became from a hobby, more or less, to a professional interest.
But how did you tell this to the people from the university, that you now switched to the other side?
Well, it was gradually, so it was not an abrupt change, but we got in...
Because you have been sent to conquer the locusts there, not to...
Yeah, but you know, there are examples in the world where you can control the grasshoppers by mechanically harvesting them, just by collecting them by hand and eating them. So it's also a control method. So, but you know, in the beginning at the university, I was considered like a crazy person. You know, how can you study insects as food? But now they are not laughing anymore. I mean, they know now that it is serious business.
And how did the people tell you in Niger that they eat the locusts? In some communities and tribes, they are too shy to tell to Western people that they actually eat them.
Now
how it came that they told you about this?
No, because I had a sabbatical, so I could specifically ask those questions. But it's true, they will never tell a Western person about that they eat insects, because they know that in the Western world it's considered like a primitive habit, or let's say you only eat it because you're starving, those kind of misconceptions.
But the first time you've been in Niger, you were there to give them information how they can kill the
I was
insecticides, or?
We used mostly integrated pest management strategies.
What's that?
Integrated pest management strategies. So really how to control them in an environmental friendly way. And I was responsible for a training program for all the salient countries in West Africa.
But this was before your sabbatical?
It was before my sabbatical, yes.
So, and actually, who was calling you there to make this program? Because if the people need the insects for eating, they should have said, no, we don't want Mr. Van Huis here.
Well, it was a program of the Ministry of Development Cooperation. So it was Ministry of Foreign Affairs who sent me out. But it was of course not only grasshoppers, it was all pest management strategies in West Africa.
So that was with grasshoppers. There's a lot of, you have been studying forest entomology, so mostly in forest entomology insects are pests of trees or whatever.
Yeah. Strange enough,
change now, actually?
Strange enough, if you go to the FAO and you ask where is edible insects important, it's in the forestry department, because they call it non-root forest products. So that is where they have situated the edible insects program. Although it could be also in the food or in the agricultural programs, of course. But that's the entry point anyway for the Food and Agriculture Organization. Yeah.
But there are a lot more edible insects that actually are also pest insects in the forestry department, or in the forest?
No, not only forestry. I know in Thailand there was a certain locust called the Bombay locust, and they first tried to control it with pesticides, and they couldn't. So then,
is this one? Patongo?
Patanga,
okay.
So at a certain moment they decided, or the government had a kind of program in which they said, let's eat them, let us collect them and eat them. And so in that way they were able to control that particular
so it was
locust species.
Against insecticides, or what was that?
I don't know exactly what it was, but it is always difficult to control locusts with pesticides.
And I heard last year that now Patongo is extinct, virtually in Thailand. Well, they have to import it from Cambodia.
Yeah. Well, extinct, I don't know. It's very difficult to...
Or sleeping.
But you can suppress them at very low levels. Yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting how this is... The interest for insects switched the sides of enemy and friend, between enemy and friend, during your career, you know.
Yeah.
And now, what was going on in Niger now? They couldn't control the locusts only mechanically by picking them?
Well, there has been a number of publications which indicated that the use of pesticides makes no sense to do that in
It's also dangerous for collecting.
And that's the other problem, that if you spray with pesticides and people eat those kind of insects, it's even dangerous. So, No, but it is economically not let's say, interesting to use pesticides for grasshoppers in millet.
The first time you've been down in Niger, did you eat them also, or did you have no idea that they eat them?
It was the first time I came across that insects were eaten in Africa. You know, all those 3 years I was there in that particular project, they never told me, so I was not aware.
You've not seen some suspicious things?
No.
Around?
No. It was only when I went to that plant protection service and they told me that I realized that it was so important. But you know what I told you, the local people don't tell you because they consider it, or that we consider it a primitive behavior. So, but then of course I asked because I visited another 23 countries in Africa, I asked specifically, everybody who I interviewed about edible insects, and then I got of course all the stories. So.
Did you recognize a change in the relationship towards the black people there when they realized that you're interested in the things that they're eating? Yeah,
I think I had no problems in extracting, let's say, the information about edible insects, because, well, they knew I took it very seriously. So, and I think honestly that I always end my slide presentations now with indicating this is all thanks to people in developing countries that we have this new food source.
So there are a lot of people that went down to Africa and suddenly they found out that people are eating insects like Paul Latham, probably all that you know Paul Latham also?
Yeah, I know him.
Personally?
Yeah, he
the
worked
man
on
who went to the
caterpillars.
Salvation Army, for the Salvation Army, and they gathered some information about eating insects, but still there's a big lack of information about what the people eat. Yeah,
that's true. Like Paul Latham, what he did was he collected lots of information about edible caterpillars in Central Africa, And there were also some Belgian entomologists who also collected quite some information. So if you look at the world map or the map of Africa and you see where insects are eaten most, then the central Republic of Congo always comes up, the Democratic Republic of Congo. But that's not because insects are eaten more there, but because there were entomologists from Belgium who collected lots of information about edible insects. So it's more an intensity of research than something else.
Do you think there's some interest in Europe to send more people down there to collect this information about what kind of insects people eat there? Because now there's a lot of interest in commercializing the edible insect business, but I don't see any people going down.
It's not for making an inventory. What is done is there are a number of projects from Denmark, also from the Netherlands, who are trying to introduce insect rearing, and especially crickets, into Kenya, into Uganda, and those are quite large projects trying to interest local communities in about rearing them in a simple way and to use them for domestic consumption or to market them.
Do you think that's a good strategy to introduce our Western insects to Africa, where they have their own, like mopani worms or whatever, that you can probably cultivate also?
You know, the point is, if you want to rear them, then the crickets, especially the house crickets, is one of the easiest ones. Concerning the mopane caterpillar, there has been a large UK project in southern Africa, and they tried to rear the mopane caterpillar, but that was not easy at all. So, of course, you should have possibilities of rearing those caterpillars. And mopane caterpillar, I think there were too many problems involved.
But probably for Madagascar, you could in Brazil, they produce this silk moss there.
That's another
so
silkworm.
That would be probably a more African style insect. So what I want to say is, why do we try to bring them our insects while they have a lot of possibilities that we don't know yet whether it would be possible?
No, if you take the caterpillars, because we have the mopane caterpillar, but in Central Africa there are lots of caterpillars. And I know at the Food and Agriculture Organization they once asked me, can you not find, or can we not make a project in which we have simple ways in rearing those caterpillars? Maybe not artificially rearing them, but having, well, like, you know, with the common silkworm, Bombix mori, to have mulberry trees, something like that, which around the village, in which you could have a kind of insectary, anyway, rearing those insects in a very simple way. So that would certainly, that's a challenge, I think, to find those simple ways of doing that.
I know that a lot of people in Europe are in the citizen science section. They are keeping insects as pets. Also, these silk mosses, they accumulate a lot of knowledge about rearing them. I've seen some of them at the exchange, how do you say, markets where they sell some eggs of these caterpillars. I think sometimes there's a lot of information there in this community where probably scientists also could gather some information about the possible potentially good insects for domestication as edible insects. So the bridge between the citizen science segment of the hobbyists, you know.
But there are such efforts. I know from projects in Cameroon, but also in the Central African Republic, where they're working on palm weevils. And with palm weevils, there are also simple ways in which you can rear the insects. So those efforts are going on.
So you think the palm weevil is a potential candidate as a domesticated edible insect?
There are already ways in which it's not necessary to. You still need palms, of course, to rear them, but you can have them in a kind of insectary and have a much higher yield than harvesting from nature.
And in most of the entomophagous societies, they are accepted as food.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
the palm weevil is an absolute delicacy in most of the tropical
in contrary
world.
to the mealworm. So in Asia
Yeah.
you find them not on
They
the
don't.
food check. So
They don't eat mealworms, but that I found also in Africa. You know, one ethnic group next to the other one, they do complete different things. So it's not that we can say in Africa everybody eats insects. No, not at all. No.
No, they differ in their habits. Of course. And food is a cultural construct, you know.
Exactly.
In fact. So when did you start to eat insects, to try them, to test them?
That was really during my sabbatical, because
during that sabbatical?
Yeah, because very often I was asking people about edible insects, and then they offered me also a meal of certain insects. So that's when I really started to eat them.
And what do you think is the potential for our European Western society?
Well, in the Western society, of course, we have the same problem that people, if they don't know this particular food source, that it's difficult to convince them. So maybe the potential is more in insects as feed. And there are some legislative problems, but I think those are going to be solved. But I think if at the moment it's allowed to use insects as feed in agriculture, salmon, for example, and they need huge quantities. So I think that's the first step. But if it will be allowed for pigs and poultry, I think it will explode really, this market.
But why should we give so high quality feed to chicken when we can eat them ourselves? So that's probably one thing that is also in contrast to the goals of the FAO, that they want to say don't feed it to other animals.
But the problem is that feed is quite expensive. And if you can rear the insects like the black soldier fly or maybe crickets or even the mealworms, if you can rear them on organic side streams, of course then you have a lot of advantages.
But we have the problem today in Thailand, 20,000 cricket farms, they're feeding this high protein chicken feed to them. It's practically the same as you cultivate chicken, you know. That's not a big difference.
That's true. If you rear them on chicken feed, the insects, then you don't have much advantages. But if you rear them on organic side streams like straw or manure, I mean, you have a tremendous advantage.
Yeah, but is it working already? Not with crickets.
With the black soldier fly, you can rear them even on straw.
Okay.
There are already, let's say, experiments done in China especially, where you can rear them on straw, which is of course an excellent side stream.
Yeah, so that's also, I think that if the farmers get dependent from the feed industry, because if they have to buy this chicken feed, then when this gets more and more expensive, the feed, they can't earn that much money anymore, and they depend on, that's the same thing like...
Yeah, but like crickets, and that are experiments done, I think in Thailand, but also in Laos, and maybe Cambodia, in which they rear them even on weeds.
Okay.
So if you can rear them on weeds, or cassava leftovers, or those kind of things, I mean, you have a tremendous advantage.
Recycling idea
exactly.
For products from where they can be locally produced.
And that is where you think you should use insects in the circular economy, because there you have a tremendous advantage over other food source or feed sources.
What do you think about the problem that cricket, for example, have this gut tract where there's some feed also inside of the cricket that you eat as a human? It was once a concern of the Food Safety Authority in the European Union. Now in Switzerland they just put it away under the carpet, you know. But
well, of course, it depends completely on the kind of substrate that you are using. But normally what the insect companies do before harvesting, they let them fast for 1 or 2 days, so the gut is empty. That's one of the ways to do it. But of course it depends very much on what the diet is, because there is also a possibility of gut feeding, as we call it. If you want to make them more nutritious, you can give them you can give them something which make them more nutritious if they have something still in their gut.
And officially it's not allowed to present feed for animals as food for humans, so that would be critical if you give it inside a cricket, hidden inside a cricket. So, but now, what is the next steps that you are? I mean, you said you want to introduce crickets in other countries, like you tried to introduce mealworms in Laos, and as soon as the researchers went away, it broke down because they didn't want to eat it. So
yeah, that's why you should not introduce insects which people don't know.
Yeah.
So if you take Laos or Thailand, there are numerous insects that are eaten. So concentrate on those insects. I think
Absolutely.
That's the most logical thing to do. Yeah.
And why not silkworms? And silkworm pupas, airy silkworms. Why only this cricket, locust, mealworm? So actually it came from this Belgian list, because they produce it for the pet food industry.
Yeah, so, no, but I think silkworms is an excellent
absolutely, it's probably the most eaten edible insect worldwide.
Yeah.
So why it's not on the list?
Yeah. No, pupa, but they are not reared in Europe, and probably a bit too expensive.
In Switzerland they are now. We have
they
restarted to do that.
In Italy as well, but I think in Asia, of course, it's they have the pupa because of the silk, so
of course
you can use that. We call that double production system. So you can eat the pupa and you can use the silk. So both.
Okay. In Wikipedia it's written that you are leading a program sustainable production of insect proteins for human consumption. Is that still true?
What? Excuse me?
In Wikipedia English, it's written under your name that you are leading a program about sustainable production of insect proteins for human consumption.
Oh, I never check it, but that project is finished. Yeah.
It's finished. Okay.
Quite some time ago. Yeah.
And what was the summary of it?
We had we had 3 PhD students working in that particular project. It was financed by our Ministry of Agriculture or Economic Affairs, and we did it together with another chair group of product quality and design. And we were working mainly on rearing the insects, on looking at environmental issues. We looked at we looked at allergies, we looked at mycotoxins, how insects are dealing with mycotoxins, and environmental issues. So we looked at greenhouse gas emissions, ammonia emissions, land use, those kind of things, life cycle analysis. And the other group, they were working mainly on how to isolate the proteins out of insects.
Okay.
So that was more or less the project.
There are 2 interesting things. First is that most people are fixed on the protein thing with insects, but insects also, they contain a lot of interesting fat that's mostly forgotten. Also bee larvae,
I think even more important are probably minerals. If you consider that in the world, a quarter of the world population is anemic, especially preschool children or pregnant women. And insects, if you look palm weevils or mopana caterpillar or crickets, they contain high levels of iron. And zinc as well. 17% of the world population has a zinc deficiency. Yeah. So I think with those minerals we can also make quite a difference. Yeah.
So most of the results from these studies went into the report of the FAO that you made for the FAO then also?
Partly, yeah, because those PhD students have to publish a thesis.
Okay.
So they came out 1 or 2 years ago. So yeah.
Another interesting thing also written in Wikipedia about nutrition and environmental aspects of entomophagy and harvesting of weaver ants is studied.
Yeah.
So you
I had one PhD
focused on weaver ants also.
I had one PhD student in Laos.
Yep.
And he worked on weaver ants, because weaver ants are very popular food in the whole of Southeast Asia. Yeah, and they call it often the eggs of the ants. It are not the eggs; it are the pupa.
Yeah.
So those pupa, they are extremely popular in salads or soup and all kind of yeah. And we worked a little bit on especially the ecology of those weaver ants.
I've met also Professor Deschat, the ant father in Kasetsart University. He's studying about 20 years about weaver ants. He wants to domesticate them in kind of boxes like the bees, you know.
My student tried it.
Okay, and?
In his own house.
Okay.
And he bought lots of equipment. Well, he hardly succeeded. It was very difficult.
Okay.
And it's mostly, with most social insects, it's very difficult to rear them. Yeah.
There are a lot of keepers of ants also in the hobby sector now. You can buy also these leaf cutter ants and so on. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of research going on in places where you don't think that it's.
But you need a queen, and the queen have to lay eggs. You have the workers, and it's complicated.
Okay.
Really complicated.
So he didn't succeed to artificially let them build a nest.
Well, he succeeded, but then the question is, can you get reproductives?
Yeah.
What's eaten is the pupa, and those are the reproductive cast of the ants, and that was extremely difficult.
Professor Deschat told me also he gives them some tuna fish so that they grow fast. That's not quite sustainable. That's from Wikipedia. So, and also it's written here that you were quoted in a documentary, Global Steak, that locusts with the food conversion ratio 1 kilogram of body weight with 2 kilogram of fodder, and the cow 1 kilogram with 10 kilogram. So that's in a lot of discussion. It comes again and again as an argument for insects, but it's not just true for all insects, you know. Some people also think that insects are just a solution for every problem, but it depends on what kind of insects, what kind of fodder.
It depends on so many things.
On so many things,
But I took these data from the literature. But there has been, on feed conversion efficiencies, there has been quite some studies now. And, well, they are all quite favorable. But still, I think if you want to economically make a difference, you have to rear them on side streams. That's my conviction. If you rear them on high quality substrates, then economically it's not interesting.
Yes, let's speak about the price of insects. Now, as soon as they are on the market, we will see what is the price for edible insects. If you look in the pet shop, they are very, very expensive. You cannot afford eating the insects from the pet shop because you don't have enough money. That's about 200 Swiss francs a kilogram or 100 francs for a kilogram of mealworm. So
but I always say, well, look at the meat industry. How much research went into the meat industry? It's unbelievable how they have automated the whole system. It is, very advanced. And we are, with edible insects, we are just at the start. So there's still a lot of things to be done.